Laskin Corla, as members of the Dáil will know, last year during the second lockdown, many universities moved to remote learning, and as a consequence, students who had prepaid for student accommodation or who were in student accommodation in or near campus had to vacate their licences early. And because students do not have the same protections under the Residential Tenancies Act as other renters when it comes to exiting from licence agreements early, many students and their families were significantly out of pocket. There is a widespread practice of students being required to pay 3 months, 6 months, and in some cases the full 9 months' rent in advance of taking up their student accommodation. And that meant thousands of families across the state lost substantial sums of money because there was no requirement for student landlords to repay that funds. And of course, many of these families themselves were very hard hit by COVID. They were on the PUP payment, the wage subsidy scheme, and were themselves experiencing hardship. So the loss of, in some cases, 3, 6 and 9,000 euros was a great financial blow for the families in question. If these had been standard private rental tenancies, the tenants could have given a 28-day notice. They would have foregone those 4 weeks' rent, but they would have had any rent prepaid beyond that period refunded. The Union of Students of Ireland rightly complained that students weren't being given fair play at the time, and they contacted both the Minister for Housing and opposition housing spokespeople, and they urged us to change the law to give students the protections they so rightly deserve. I know the Minister met with the Union of Students of Ireland, and he has always engaged constructively with them on these and related matters, and myself and other opposition politicians did likewise. Those engagements on the opposition side led to the bill before us today. And it is a USI bill. It is designed by USI, it is led by USI, and it has the support of 56 deputies in the opposition who have co-signed the bill, and I believe others who have not signed it will also be supporting it here today. The bill does 3 very simple things, 2 of which are COVID-19 related protections, and 1 is a permanent change to the protections for students. The first is, if a student is in student accommodation and is forced to leave that accommodation early because of future COVID-19 restrictions, they will be able to, as all other tenants do, give a 28-day notice and get refunded for any additional rent paid in advance beyond that 28-day notice period. Likewise, if a student is not able to take up pre-booked accommodation for similar COVID-19 restrictions, they too will be able to issue a 28-day notice to exit that licence early and will be fully refunded for anything beyond that period. And we think these are very fair and eminently sensible changes. The landlord will get their 28 days rent covered, and anything beyond that will be fully refunded. The permanent change, however, this bill proposes is that, in fact, the practice of pre-charging students for 3, 6 or 9 months should be ended. It is simply an unfair burden, particularly on working families in many parts of Ireland who are sending their sons and daughters to universities in the cities and towns, that they have to come up with such large amounts of cash when, again, regular renters in general pay a month's rent and a month's rent deposit. This bill has undergone very detailed assistance from the Office of Parliamentary Legal Advice, and we'd like to thank them for their work on this. And really, I suppose, the core message of this is, let's give students fair play. Let's ensure that student renters are given exactly the same protections as all others. Obviously, if a landlord is being served with an early notice of termination, they get their 4 months. That is good enough in the private rental sector. Generally, it should be good enough for student landlords. But equally, students get the fair play of refunds beyond that. And crucially, once we get to the other side of COVID, the practice of requiring the prepayment of thousands and thousands of euros for hard-pressed working families comes to an end. I think it's a reasonable bill, I think it's a sensible bill, and I would urge the Minister, as he has done previously in opposition, in fairness to him, on protecting students, work with us in opposition and pass the USI bill to give students fair play. Thank you, Last Councillor.